So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than the normal transmission rebuild, transfer case rebuild, engine, what have you, that we normally do. These jobs I don't get into the shop too often. They're pretty few and far between, and this one that I'm doing now is a perfect opportunity to make a video on one. So what we're going to be doing is making a standalone harness to run a 24-valve Vp44 engine in whatever vehicle you want to put it in. Even if you just wanted to run it standalone on a like an engine test stand. So let me kind of explain what we got going on here. So this is your typical engine computer and wiring harness that you would find on a 98.5, 99, 2000, 01, and 02 Vp44 24-valve Cummins engine. Now, we're not going to be using this one. I just set this here for the purpose of this video, just to show you how nasty and ugly one looks like when you pull your engine out of your truck, or if you go and source one from the junkyard. This is typically what it's going to look like. If not worse, it might have more oil and grease on it. So for this customer that we're building this wiring harness for, we have already gone through and cleaned his harness and re-lumed it. We've also trimmed down a bunch of stuff that we're no longer going to be using. So we've taken the fuel heater wiring out of it, the water and fuel sensor wiring, the high pressure AC switch, the AC clutch wiring, and all of the alternator wiring. He didn't want any of that. Now you might be asking, why did we take all that stuff out? This engine that this harness goes on, he's going to be putting this into, I believe, a 70s, maybe an 80s model OBS, or not OBS, square body Chevy. And so he doesn't need the water and fuel light, the fuel heater, and as far as alternator and air conditioning goes, he's going to be running that off of the square body Chevy truck side of things. He's not going to be running that through the Dodge Cummins wiring. But anyway, I just wanted to show you guys how much difference there is when you go through and trim one down and clean it all up. Huge difference. That's, you know, they're all ugly with the old wiring loom falling off of them and stuff. So this is what we've got to work with now. We have a clean slate here as far as an engine wiring harness goes. Now, on our engine wiring harness, this is essentially the end of it. And this would be like factory, like you have on any second gen 24-valve Cummins truck. So these would plug into these plugs here on your firewall. And then these run off to the powertrain control module and the fuse box, and then some other, you know, places where wires run off to. But essentially, what we're going to be building now is converting these plugs to be standalone for, you know, basically anything. This is going in a square body Chevy, but you could be putting this in a car or a go-kart if you wanted to, whatever. So we're trying to get this, all of these wires down to where we have a ground and a key on power. Basically, you know, there's a couple other ones we're going to end up with, but essentially to where it can go into anything with a hot and a ground, turn the key, and it powers up the computer. And, you know, everything works as it should, or as you would want it to. So I will start by saying, not a lot of people know how to do this. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just trying to save someone else some hassle. So there is two major variations. There's 98.5 to 2000 engine wiring harnesses. And then there's 01 to 02. They look pretty similar. They're completely different systems as far as how they run the engine and everything. You have to know how to distinguish between the two. And even in 01 and 02, there are a lot of differences in the wiring harnesses for those years. But for what we're doing, 01 and 02 can basically be categorized as the same. Now, as far as, you have to be able to understand all of this. If you have to do any kind of diagnostics, if you get it all together and something's not working, we will be putting an OBD2 plug in it, so you can plug a scanner into it and diagnose things. That only works when you've done it successfully. If you wire all this up and something isn't working and you can't use a scanner to diagnose it, you have to be able to know what you're doing, like by hand, without any kind of diagnostic scan tool. So another thing I will say, if you do a lot of digging on the internet and go through old forums and groups and stuff, you will come across this wiring diagram for building a standalone wiring harness for a 24-valve Cummins. When you find this wiring harness, this is just, again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or brag or anything. If you follow this harness to a T, it will not work. This will get you close, but it is not correct. You will have issues, and then that's where everything always comes into play, like how everyone always says, oh, it's just a Vp44, just P-pump it, or just put a common rail on it. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Not necessarily to do with this, but any kind of little issue any Vp44 engine ever has, everybody just P-pump it, or just put a common rail in it. And I just want to let you know, if you find this wiring harness online and you follow it to a T, you will have issues. It will get you close to what we're trying to do here, but it won't work. And I'm not going to go over what needs to be changed because it took me a long time to figure this out. But essentially, what it all comes down to is finding the hot and grounds in here. So you've got a ground, you've got a constant key on power, or a constant power, and you've got a key on. When you turn your key on, it powers everything up. We're also going to be wiring in an OBD2 port, not only for diagnostics, but also if you wanted to tune this, you still can put a tuner on this via the OBD2 port, and you can do a pump tap. If you're familiar with Vp44s, you can do a pump tap tuner. And then we also need a relay. Now, I will say, it does not matter, theoretically, what relay socket you get. You can get a cheapo one, you can get a high dollar relay socket. That doesn't really matter because none of this is real high amperage. What does matter is that you have a good relay. So don't just go down to Walmart, to the automotive section, and get a relay holder and a relay. The relay holder, probably fine. Don't use some cheapo Amazon or Walmart relay. Even if you had to, go to a junkyard and go pull out a Ford Motorcraft or a OEM brand name relay. I don't think any of the actual Dodges used this style of relay, not that I can really think of. Maybe on the second gen, some of them do, but they don't have this little tab right here. On some of the Ford Super Duty trucks, they do have relays this style with a mounting tab, and that's what we're after, so it can be easily mounted once this wiring harness is in the truck. But basically what I'm getting at, the socket doesn't really matter. It can be a cheapo, as long as you pay good attention to how they're, obviously if it's falling apart, don't use it. But more importantly is to have a good relay. So we're gonna go through this harness, or through this diagram. I know some things have to be changed, and we're gonna wire all this up to where essentially what we're left with is these plugged into here. I have them backwards, but essentially where these are just plugged into here. Farther down the line, we have a relay wired in, an OBD2 port, and I've got with the customer, he's given me measurements of, how many feet away he wants the OBD wired up. And then basically we'll just have, it's been so long since I've done one, I want to say 3 wires just sticking out, ground, constant, and key on, that he can connect to his square body Chevy wiring once he gets it. And then we'll have all this loomed up nice, like we have this harness here. So I'm going to go through and assemble this, and I will show you the final result, and maybe we will plug it into a truck and see an engine run. Okay, so I got our 2 main plugs here depinned from all the pins that we're not going to use. Now on the C126 plug, this diagram tells you which wires you need and which ones you don't need, and some other optional ones you can use if you're going to wire up some of the other functions. Basically, another issue this has, if you follow this, how to wire it up, you're going to have problems. But another kind of confusing part is that these came off the truck side. Now, if you have an automatic or manual transmission truck, the engine harnesses are exactly the same, but the truck harness is not. And so in the 126 plug here, there's two wire colors that are the same as two that you're going to use. So you have two dark greens, and then you have two tan and brown, brown with a tan stripe. And if you don't have all the wiring harnesses, their diagrams, good luck figuring out which pin is which, because there's duplicate wire colors used. So out of that whole mess that we had, these are the ones that we're going to use. So we got 4 pins out of the C125 plug, and we have 3 pins out of the C126 plug. So now we can get to wiring these up. And what we're going to do for now is just kind of strip the ends and twist everything together real short, and just check the functionality of things before we actually go through and wire up everything to length, and with the relay and loom it all. All right, so it looks like a mess right now, but I have it wired up exactly how this diagram shows that you find online. And I've even swapped out our relay for a different one that I know is good. And this should be like turning the key on, and that relay does not click. I just did that to show that this is incorrect. If you follow this, it does not work. So now I'm going to go through, swap some stuff around, and we will see that it works. All right, so now that we have it all wired up correctly, this essentially is our key on. This would be like turning the key on in the truck and giving the whole thing power, and you can hear the relay is clicking. And I checked with a multimeter here that we do have power going to the correct places. So now that I know all that works, I'm going to do the same thing, just kind of ugly temporarily wire up our OBD2 port, and then we should be able to hook up a scanner and read not a whole lot of data, but we can at least, because there's no sensors plugged in, but we can at least make sure we can communicate with the ECM. So I'm going to wire this up, just twist some wires together, hot ground, communication wires, whatever. And after we've confirmed everything works, then we'll go through and make all these wires the same length, 4 feet long, however long he wanted the relay and stuff to be mounted. And we'll go ahead and loom it all up and do it all correctly. All right, so here we have the OBD2 port loosely wired up. We're going to turn the key off, quote unquote. We're going to turn the key on. I'm just putting it in this little hole here in this vice grip. So the key is on, right? You can see our scanner is off. It's the same cord. We're gonna go ahead and plug our OBD2 scanner in, if I can get it with one hand. You see the green light turned on, scanner turned on. It probably won't do automatic ID. We're gonna go to Dodge. This is an older scanner, it's kind of slow. We're gonna go down to 2001 because that's what this ECM and harness is. Let's see if it'll automatic ID it. Probably not, but that's fine. Wow, it actually did. 2001 Dodge Ram truck, 4-wheel drive, straight 6 turbo diesel. We're gonna select that. And we're gonna go into the ECM, obviously, that's all we can do. And I don't know what this was. We're just gonna go with manual transmission with AC. And if it doesn't like it, we'll select automatic, but it shouldn't matter. We're gonna go to data display. This is all good that we've made it this far. That means we have good communication. Let's see if we can read data. Oh yeah. So obviously it's not gonna show anything right now. There's no RPM, there's no injection pump, RPM, anything like that, because all this is unplugged from sensors and stuff. We should be able to see like battery temperature. I don't know how it's able to read that, but it can. Intake air temperature, I guess that maxes out at 114 if it's unplugged. Coolant maxes out at 190. No, that shouldn't be, but I don't really care what these numbers are right now. This is just to show that we have communication and that the ECM is on. So yeah, let's go back. See if we can read codes. There should be a whole bunch of codes, obviously, because yeah, nothing's plugged in. But none of that matters. All that matters is that we can communicate with it. And you can go in here and do like diagnostic functions. Obviously we can't do anything right now. There's no oil pressure sensor plugged in. There's no throttle position sensor. There's no injection pump plugged in. This is just to show that we can, in fact, communicate with the computer and that it is so far working normally. So I'm gonna go in here and get out of this, turn this thing off, unplug it, and turn our key off. It fell out. So now that I know all the wiring works, now we're gonna go through and actually loom out a harness that doesn't look like spaghetti. It'll be nice, professional looking. I just wanted to make sure that everything worked, because like I said, it has been a long time since I've had to make one of these, and I knew there was something with this diagram that's incorrect, and so I wanted to make sure I remembered what it was that I needed to go back through and change. So let's build a harness now. Okay, so here's the harness that we have come up with, built from scratch. So these are our two factory plugs here coming off of the engine harness, and then we have these plugs that we spliced into. We have our relay holder, and then we have this 2.5 foot lead is what he asked for the OBD2 port. He will have to de-pin these and run the wires through his firewall and then put the pins back into the plug. And then here we have we have 4 wires, or 5. No, we got 4 wires. We got the big black one is ground, and then the big red one is constant power. Those both go straight to the battery. And then the other 2 are key on power. One is key on to run the engine, and then the other one's key on just to give power to the OBD2 port, or not necessarily the port, but to the diagnostic side of this system. So we're gonna go ahead and get this all loomed up in the cloth electrical tape, make it look real nice, and then we will get these labeled. It'll just be sticking out the end, labeled to where they go, and that'll be that. We will test this before we send it out to him. Okay, one last time before we loom it up, we have our diagnostic scanner plugged in. We're going to air quote turn the key on, give it power. See the light turn on, scanner automatically turns on. That means our ECM's awake. And we already did the testing before when everything was just twisted together up real short, so we know it all works. So we're gonna go ahead and get this all loomed up. All right, so here's our final product. We got it all loomed up. Again, those plug into the factory engine harness. We got a relay to mount up on his firewall. This will run through his firewall, down into his cab, wherever he wants to mount his OBD2 diagnostic port. And then these are just hot grounds, ground, constant, and key on. that he will have to splice into his OBS Chevy wiring. So like the key-on powers, they'll go to, like if it was I'm assuming a 350 small block Chevy V8 gas, it'll have a key-on power wire for the ignition coil, and that's what these will go to. And then these other two will go to hot and ground on the battery. And it'll run a Vp44 24 valve Cummins with a hot ground and a key on. So that's it. That's our little standalone wiring harness. This eliminates the need to run the entire Dodge Ram wiring harness, powertrain control module, fuse box, all that good stuff. So I will recommend to him he runs some fuses on these. Just little 30 amp and 30 amp for the main one, and then 10 amp for the key-on power. But yeah, that is it. Looks pretty good. Turned out great. I'm happy with it. This is my personal truck. It runs and drives fine, so I know there's no issues with it. We have our standalone harness plugged in here. You can see the engine is running completely separate from the truck that it's in. This is running off of the harness that we built here. It's plugged into the engine. Our ground, our hot. We'll do our two key-on powers. And I need to hit that starter button one-handed. You can see it here. Turn the key off. So this harness is good to go.